Law 29. Plan all the way to the end. This law advises that you must map out your entire trajectory to the final objective before making your first move. You must account for all possible obstacles, consequences, and twists of fortune so that you aren't blindsided or forced to surrender your gains to others. So, what is the core philosophy here? The ending is everything. Most people practice wishful thinking rather than strategic planning. They focus on the thrill of the initial victory, ignoring the inevitable hurdles. Law 29 forces you to step out of the current moment and evaluate the full life cycle of your ambitions. When you plan all the way to the end, you accomplish several critical things. Some of these things are: you avoid the scavenger effect. If your plan is incomplete, someone else will swoop in at the finish line to take the glory and the spoils. You have to maintain control. Prevent yourself from being overwhelmed by the chaos of events because you already anticipated the potential detours. Know when to stop. Greed often drives people to push too far. A well-defined end point tells you exactly when to claim your victory and step back. So, how do you apply the law? Work backward. Envision your absolute end goal first, then trace the steps backwards to the present. This creates a logical blueprint. Account for the what-ifs. Brainstorm all the worst-case scenarios and unintended consequences. If your actions create new enemies or leave you overextended, you must adjust. Also, use the branching method. Map out your options as branching paths. If the situation shifts, you are already equipped to adapt without reacting emotionally. And finally, break into milestones. While keeping the overarching endgame in mind, embed smaller short-term achievements within the plan to maintain morale and momentum. So there are two types of thinkers, and this is going to show you the contrast. First, there is the short-sighted planner. This person reacts to events as they happen, playing checkers rather than chess. They might win a few quick battles, but they inevitably get outmaneuvered because they have no long-term vision. Then there is the strategist. This person visualizes the entire game from start to finish. They're not swayed by short-term greed or monetary glory. Let's look at a couple of historical and modern examples. First, let's talk about Napoleon Bonaparte and his historical failure. Despite being an unparalleled military strategist, Napoleon's 1812 invasion of Russia exemplifies a failure to plan to the end. He focused purely on taking Moscow, but failed to consider the harsh Russian winter and the scorched earth strategy of the enemy, which ultimately decimated his 600,000-man army. Let's also discuss Nokia versus Apple. This is a modern business example. Nokia held the dominant market share in mobile phones in the early 2000s. They failed to plan for the long-term technological evolution of the industry. Apple carefully strategized a holistic ecosystem that made the iPhone a game changer, resulting in Nokia's eventual market collapse. Even though I'm more of a Samsung fan than an Apple fan, that's still true. But guys, that is a general understanding of the law. If you have not done so, I highly suggest that you go back and watch the previous laws, all of them, and I would watch them in order because each law builds on the next one. There's also an introduction that will give you a better idea of the topic I'm discussing today. you should definitely watch that too. It will give you a much better understanding of everything. And as I've said many times before, I don't mind discussing anything as long as we can keep it respectful, decent, and not super disruptive. I will talk about anything with anyone. So feel free to leave comments or join us in the live stream and we can talk about it there. I make these videos because I want people not to be manipulated, and I think this teaches people how to understand the world a little bit better. Hope everybody has a good day, and I'll see you soon.